Okay, so now we're under the car. Here's the pulley here here's the alternator, and here's the belt that we'll need to pull off the pulley. And like I said before, you don't need to strip the entire belt off the car. You just need to release the belt off the pulley and you're good to go. The next step is removing the alternator in here. And before we do that, you can see this red hose here, the intercooler hose that runs from the turbocharger to the intercooler. You can see I've got it marked there in duct tape, the red hose. It does take a bit of messing around with pliers, but that hose will need to come off. You'll need to take the belt off the alternator, and then we'll get started with the underbody section. We'll have to take the positive lead off the alternator. Like I said before, make sure you've disconnected the negative lead off the battery, because you don't want anything to be live within the car. There's another plug in here that has to be removed also. So you've got one plug, you've got the positive lead, you've got the belt, and you've got the hose. So we'll take that off now. Okay, so now we've up to the point where we've got to disconnect the alternator. Again, I've just tried to mark as many bolts as possible in yellow just to make it easier to understand. So we've got the bottom two bolts in here, and then moving up to the top, there's a few that have to come off, and we have a bracket that we've got to remove. So remember, the alternator is a bit heavy, so if you remove the bolts in the wrong order, it might actually fall down on top of you. So just be mindful of that. That these bolts actually hold the alternator in place, and it might just fall down. So just slacken all the bolts off first and find out what order that you need to remove them in. But there we go, we've got a few there we've got to take off, and they're all Torx bolts. Okay, so we've removed the alternator and we've made a lot more space. You can see here I've just marked some more bolts that we need to remove. This is the bracket that holds, or one of the brackets that hold the turbocharger. You can see there's 3 bolts here. That top bolt there is copper, so remember, if there's no magnet that will stick to copper, so if that goes and flies off somewhere, you have to be really careful because you may not get it back. Be very careful with that. And you've seen I've marked here in the top, that's an oil return line. There's 2 bolts there, and there is another oil return line in there I've marked in yellow. Both of those will need to be removed. There might be a little bit of oil spillage, but so far I've been pretty lucky. Again, just make sure all these bolts, you don't lose them or they go flying off anywhere. Just be very careful because you're working underneath the car. And you'll see later too that these 2 oil return lines, they have some little gaskets that need to be removed. So we're now reaching the stage where we can just start replacing gaskets and things like that. You can see in here too that there is the oil return line housing where it bolts to the engine block, and you can see that black tab there. That is another place where you need to renew the gasket. I've already done the gasket at that point, so I'm not going to take it off completely, but you can see that there's 2 bolts there, and you can replace that gasket also. There might be a little bit of oil leakage, but it's nothing crazy. Okay, so you should have the bolts for the oil return lines removed. You've got the alternator removed. You're starting to make a bit of space in here. Now we get to the point of the project. It's probably one of the most difficult. You can see in the back, in the top corner there's a bolt I've marked in yellow. That is the bracket that holds the back of the turbocharger. It's very hard to get to, and we've got to make a bit of space. There's another bolt here that you've got to remove to make a bit of room. I know it doesn't seem hard right now, but you really have to get in there with your hand. There's not much room, and you can follow that. If you follow that bracket upwards, there's another bolt that we have to get to that's right up in the top of the engine compartment. It's very, very hard to get to. You're just going to have to be patient, and I would say that this is probably one of the most hardest parts of this project, getting this bracket off. So you're just going to have to prepare yourself for this. Okay, you guys, so I apologize in advance. This next part is a bit hard to film. what we're going to undo now is probably the most difficult bolt to remove and to replace in the whole project. It's a copper bolt, so if it falls anywhere and you lose it, it's going to be really hard to retrieve. You have to get to it in a very obscure place. I've got a picture here of the bracket which supports the back of the turbocharger. You can't actually see the bolt at the moment, but I'm going to try and show it for you now. It's very hard to get to. So we come around in here, and I'm just trying to locate myself, and there you can see it there, just at the bottom sort of the frame of the screen. You can see I've marked it in yellow there. We're looking basically directly under the turbocharger exhaust section. You can see the brass mesh, and you can see the exhaust pipe there, but you can see I've marked in yellow. That is the bolt that we need to get at. You literally have to stick your hand up and under somehow to get to it. You'll need a small socket or something very small to get at. It's a Torx bolt, and yeah, if you can tackle this bolt, you can basically tackle the rest of the project, because it's so hard to get to. You're just gonna have to be very patient, and there's no way of removing the turbocharger without getting this bolt off, so you're just gonna have to go for it. So you guys, I'm just trying to help you guys out and show you how I'm getting to that bolt with the long arm socket and the mini socket wrench. I'm going to try and put my hand up onto it, and basically that's how you have to get to it, up under. You can work from underneath the car. If you think you can get to it from the top of the car, you can give it a go, but from what I've seen, you can't actually see the bolt if you're doing it from the engine bay side, so you're just going to have to get underneath, and you're just going to have to get your special socket to get onto that bolt. It is a copper bolt, so it can be a bit tight to remove. You might even have to spray it with some lubricant, but as you can see there, you get to the bolt, and I'll just quickly show you on the camera. This is basically what I use for the entire project. It's small, it's easy to get into small places with, and it is basically my go-to when working in tight spaces. So okay, then there you have it. These are the brackets that hold the turbocharger. So you should have two brackets, and you should have the bracket for the alternator. You'll have yourself all the alternator bolts. It's just good to keep them all together, and you can see we've removed some of the copper bolts from the exhaust section, so make sure you keep all them. You can keep them together or keep them separate. I just like to keep everything all together. We've still got a few more to remove, but that's basically the under section of the car done. Now it's time to go back into the engine bay, and we're very close to removing the turbocharger.